It's been recently reported, David, that the President of the United States, who's been in office well over 100 days now, has only received the presidential daily briefing, the most important, highly classified daily intelligence briefing, some 12 times, some 12 days of his 100 plus days in office. What is he doing if he's not reading the PDB?
The integrity and objectivity of the intelligence community's analysis is a solemn obligation of all analysts to make sure that there's going to be no politicization of that analysis and that intelligence.
Trump and Rubio nuking over 100 National Security Council staffers, saying, you're no longer needed here. Thank you for your service and get the hell out. Now, what's interesting about this is there's this reaction, this antibody reaction from much of the deep state, including this woman called Susan Rice, who is screaming about the fact that President Trump is not reading the presidential daily briefings, right? The intelligence community would funnel their intelligence to the president, and then it would move the president to do certain things, right? It would influence the decisions coming out of the Oval Office and the White House. And so now Trump says, you know, we don't actually trust you people anymore, so I don't need to read your stupid propaganda that are going to come over from you, people like Susan Rice and people like John Brennan, to dictate to us what the reality is. We don't need any of that anymore. And now you're also fired. So here is what CNN said. More than 100 National Security Council staffers on administrative leave. Next step, they'll be gone. Says more than 100 on leave on Friday as a result of Trump and Rubio. And according to two other officials, major overhauls, including staff reductions. An email from the National Security Council Chief of Staff called Brian McCormick went out 4:20 yesterday on Friday saying, you're being dismissed. And guess what? You have 30 minutes to clean out your desks. Otherwise, we're coming over there. That's according to an administration official. Let's go. If they weren't on campus, the email read, you can email an address and arrange a time to come get your stuff and turn in your devices. The email subject line read, your return to home agency, indicating that most of those affected were from other departments and agencies. On Thursday, Rubio also convened a meeting with principals, which raised speculation that it was about reorganization. Then on Friday at 3:45, senior directors were summoned to a meeting with Rubio. A flurry of emails from those leaving then started going out with personal contact info. With this happening on a Friday afternoon before a long holiday weekend, the official called it as unprofessional and reckless as could possibly be. All these deep state NSC hacks are, you know, having a tough Memorial Day. That's okay. Those put on leave include career officials no one cares about, as well as political hires made during the Trump administration, and they're gone too. In recent weeks, staffers were being re-interviewed by the Office of Presidential Personnel about the reshaping. One of the questions asked was what officials thought the appropriate size of the agency was. People are like, well, I think it's good. I think like keep it the same. Like, okay, you're fired. You have to come in and say, we should downsize this, definitely. But I'm critical because here's why. I'm irreplaceable. But if you can, no, I think we should hire more people. You're gone. But under President Trump, the NSC's role has been diminished with the overhaul continuing. Earlier this month, Mike Waltz, who led the NSC, was removed by. Waltz had also been on shaky ground, losing his influence. And a lot of people were saying that Mike Waltz, the reason they nixed him, not so much because of the signal thing, but because he was actually undermining the Trump administration. Now, I don't know what the background on that is, but yeah, Waltz was gone. NSC's gone. It feels like there's a nice shakeup happening over there. But what's interesting is Susan Rice is furious about these changes. Carly Bonney clipped this for us. So what the hell is she talking about over here? Here is what Susan Rice was saying, furious that Trump is not reading the corrupt CIA's daily memo for them. No. We unsubscribe from your fake news. We don't want it coming into our inbox. Delete, mark spam. Thank you, though. You might say it's reckless or whatever, take her position on this, but the CIA set Trump up in conjunction with the FBI and the rest of these people. So why would he read their fake reports?
It's been recently reported, David, that the President of the United States, who's been in office well over 100 days now, has only received the presidential daily briefing, the most important, highly classified daily intelligence briefing, some 12 times, some 12 days of his 100 plus days in office. What is he doing if he's not reading the PDB?
Governing the country?
And I hate to say this, you could say it about the airplane, you could say it about Signalgate, you could say it about so many different things. But if any other president had refused or opted not to receive the presidential daily briefing from the intelligence.
First of all, Joe Biden probably couldn't even read those, all right, long enough or comprehend anything that was going in there. So the idea that it's some critical thing that the president has to have is a joke because we didn't even have a competent president for 4 years. So relax about that. Don't scream at us about a scandal when the last president had no brain at all, couldn't read the daily briefs.
Community on a regular basis. It would be a huge, huge scandal.
Well, it is a scandal because Joe Biden was an invalid.
With, massive investigations in Congress and, huge speculation that the president is not playing with a full deck. That's a key part of the job.
Trump has his entire administration. Tulsi knows what's going on. Rubio knows what's going on. Ratcliffe, CIA, knows what's going on. They're all up to speed and apprised. And Trump doesn't need to get the daily little nudge. It's like a nudge from the CIA and the deep state every day about what you should be doing. And you can imagine, right, the repetition of that every day. This is getting worse, Mr. President. They probably have it all scammed out. 6 months, build up to it. Tell him this, tell him this, tell him this, tell him this, tell him this. Then on day 6, he's walking him into an operation. No thanks. We don't need to do that. But the people who are in a part of this infrastructure are obviously furious that he's not complying with the infrastructure they set up to control him. And John Brennan was also talking about this. This is one of the dudes who helped facilitate and I think sign the 51 letter that was fake and rigged by the CIA. And the CIA was involved in that. They were not, ex-CIA officials or ex-intelligence officials. There were people on that list, including Mike Morrell, who were getting paid as contractors by the U.S. government. Not as official CIA agents, they say, but they were getting paid by the government. CIA also let them use their facilities. And the CIA, their approval committee that approves publications, also read and validated the 51 laptop letter and signed off on it. So they're fraudsters. They're liars. They're running an op on all of us. And this is John Brennan, along with Jen Psaki, who's a part of it.
The integrity and objectivity of the intelligence community's analysis is a solemn obligation of all analysts to make sure that there's going to be no politicization of that analysis and that intelligence. And it's quite clear from the reporting that has come out that the direction that was coming from Tulsi Gabbard's chief of staff, Joe Kent, to try to manipulate the analysis so that it would in fact conform with what the Trump administration has done on Venezuela. And it's because these analysts resisted that interference is the reason why they were fired. But also
because they're morons. You guys are idiots. You signed that letter. Everyone knew the laptop was real. You conveniently reframed it as all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, and you tried to do that to rig an election. We all saw it. We all watched it. So how dare you respond to Tulsi in such a manner? Tulsi was responding to some of this saying, talk about intelligence. Remember when the CIA and the FBI couldn't come out and tell us where'd COVID come from? Like, oh no, it came from a bat in a sea market over there. We're like, oh really? Because we've seen other naturally emerging viruses pop up throughout the world, swine flu, bird flu, all the things. And this was a little bit different. This was a military response. Everybody freaked out. Trump went in there to the briefing, orange, came back out white. We all saw that on his face, like, oh crap. Don't know what the hell they told him, man. But the whole country was reoriented, and then they couldn't even tell us the truth about anything that was actually going on. So Tulsi Gabbard, who is now the director of national intelligence, is asked about this, and she explains, we're going to do real intelligence this time. We're not going to get a bunch of morons to sign off on a letter saying it's Russian when it's obviously not. So they're either partisan hacks who are liars, or they're idiots because everybody else knew it was a real laptop.
Documents that I've declassified. First, the strategic implementation plan of the Biden administration's designation of potential violent domestic extremists. It really talks about people who may likely turn out to be domestic violent extremists, or those who may likely turn to violence because of these specific quote unquote ideologies that they hold. And there's a consistent thread through here that these ideologies that they are designating as turning into potentially violent activities or being manifested in violent activities happen to be those of people who were using their First Amendment rights to oppose certain policies of the Biden administration. And while some of the examples that are focused on there have to do with those who opposed the COVID vaccine mandates, those who opposed the mask mandates, parents who were concerned that their children going to school may be forcibly vaccinated with the COVID vaccine without the consent or awareness of parents. The list goes on, but it's not exclusive to this. In some of these reports that we've declassified, it shows that, people who were opposed to Biden's border policy, for example, could therefore have propensities to join a militia or could become these domestic violent extremists that we're talking about here. And again, it's important to look at this in the totality and the sequence of how this happened. These documents were issued in December of 2021. You remember very well, Will, the ominous speech that President Biden gave in 2022, where with this red background and Marines standing in the background,
Gates of hell,
he issued an address to the nation warning the American people that Donald J. Trump and MAGA Republicans pose a direct threat to the fabric of our republic. And then you put that together with how the FBI and others within the Biden administration directed social media companies to censor Americans and undermine our First Amendment rights because, of course, the social media companies don't want to be in a position to support the spread of domestic violent extremism. So when you look at all of these things together, you understand at its core the thing that I committed to the American people to root out, which is the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community and national security state against the American people.
Absolutely amazing. Shout out to Tulsi Gabbard. And what a beautiful juxtaposition between these two. Isn't it nice to watch John Brennan, one of the worst liars who's ever served so-called in American government, contrasted with Tulsi Gabbard. That dude comes out, lies about their censorship of us. They attacked us. Remember, we had this conversation back during the time. It's like every quarter they came out with a new update. Like you get a new feature on your application. FBI's like, well, this quarter we're going to focus on HGVEs. You're like, what's an HGV? Homegrown violent extremism. You're like, wow. Then the next quarter they come out, they're like, actually, now it's going to be DVEs, domestic violent extremism. How is that different than homegrown if it's domestic? Well, it's different because it's whatever. And they kept coming up with stuff. The RMVEs, the religiously motivated violence. Every quarter, it's like they had to introduce a new feature to keep people freaked out because that was their whole operation, which was to weaponize the government against the political party. They tried to throw Trump off the ballot. They were successful in Colorado. The Supreme Court had to reverse that. They indicted him 4 times. They made up hoaxes in 2016 about Russia collusion, did it again in 2020 and 2024. It's nonstop with these lunatics. But now Tulsi Gabbard is the DNI. I mean, what a beautiful reversal and development of good fortune here. Tapper is reeling. Most of the media is panicked. Jen Psaki's thrown out of the White House. And now her and Brennan are doing little patty cake games on MSNBC while we're back in charge. Because their frauds were evident, obvious, and people saw what they did. And now we are undoing their damage to our country.